Last time on Darkcore Frontiers. The young Zraynian stowaway Nex has been recruited in a space heist. After a tense meeting with Captain Grimhelm, Nex joins the crew on a visit to the chaotic Mordrax 4 spaceport. There they recruit new specialists for their upcoming mission to steal valuable Darkcore shards from the Aegis Transport. As the preparations for the heist intensify, Nex learns that the tactical specialist Rax Jerex is in reality Oron Starling, an undercover agent for the Space Authority, who has agreed to work with Nex to prevent the theft of the Darkcore shards. Darkcore Frontiers, Season 1, The Stowaway, by Thomas Chase. Episode 10, Breaching the Aegis Transport. The SSV Nebula Nighthawk, 28 minutes from the Aegis Transport convoy, the Shadow Lanes. Nex entered the Situation Room, DC hovering beside him. Captain Grimhelm sat over the holotable. One by one, the crew streamed in. Slime, wearing his spotted lab coat, followed by Legatron. Spank, the little weapons expert, fur slicked down with a heavy application of styling gel. And Tiny, who had to turn sideways to fit through the door. Ironclaw came in last, fully fitted out in his mechanical arms and hooded coat, and tucked himself away in a corner. Last to enter was Oron Starling as Rax Jerex. His cold gray eyes swept the room and locked onto each crew member in turn. It was hard to believe this was the same guy he'd been talking to in that maintenance closet a few hours earlier. Grimhelm turned from the holotable to address the group.
We're about to drop out of hyperspace for the final meeting with our associates.
He lingered on the final word, letting it hang in the air with a sneer.
Be ready for anything. Remember, we're not here to make friends.
The familiar disorientation of returning to normal space tilted them to one side. Outside the viewport, 3 other ships popped into space around them. The Hellrunner crowded the viewport, a scarred Dreadnought-class warship bristling with enough firepower to level a small moon. Captain Susek's face fluttered up from the holotable. His icy eyes pierced through the feed.
I trust you're all adequately prepared.
Susek's silky voice oozed from the speakers.
The Hellrunner is poised and eager to obliterate any opposition that might arise.
Captain Dulac of the Innovation nodded. His stealth corvette was barely visible even at this close range. Its adaptive camouflage rippled like a ghost ship. Captain Nansen's weathered face completed the quartet. The reinforced hull and powerful tractor beams of his repurposed mining frigate, the Null Taurus, would make it the tank of the operation. Grimhelm leaned forward, his skeletal fingers steepled.
We're going over this plan one last time, and I don't want any mistakes. Susek, your dreadnought will provide the distraction, engaging the Aegis Transport's escort ships. Dulac, I want your boarding parties ready to go before that transport even knows what hit it.
Rax Jerex stepped forward, his voice sharp.
We need to change the runner's approach vector. If it engages the escort ships head-on, we can move up behind the transport without detection.
Susek's eyes narrowed.
That strategy, Jerex, places my vessel in unwarranted jeopardy. We'd be exposing our ventral weapons array. That would make us susceptible to a counterattack.
It's a risk we need to take.
Jerex insisted.
The element of surprise is crucial here. If we can't surpass the Aegis Transport's defenses, this whole operation falls apart.
Grimhelm's head moved from one to the other.
Jerex has a point. Susek, can you adjust that attack pattern or not?
Susek's jaw clenched.
It is possible, of course, but I would be severely limiting my capacity to maneuver.
After some back and forth, they finally reached a compromise. Susek and Nansen would split their forces, creating a pincer movement to provide distraction and cover for the Nighthawk to slip in.
All ships prepare for the final jump,
Susek commanded.
Victory lies in wait on the other side.
The holograms winked out, leaving the Situation Room of the Nebula Nighthawk in darkness. Grimhelm turned to his navigation officer.
Set that course and prepare for the jump.
The crew moved to the bridge. As the hyperdrive spooled up, Nex felt the sensation of being in two places at once. Then the stars outside stretched into lines. Grimhelm stood at the center of the bridge.
All right, pay attention. Today you're all going to be tested to your limits. We're not talking about knocking over some backwater fuel depot or hijacking a rusted cargo freighter. This is the kind of operation that comes once in a lifetime, if you're lucky. We pull this off, and we'll be sitting pretty. Fail, and, well, let's just say failure isn't an option. I want you to...
The crew leaned in. Even Slime's watery eyes widened. But then everything changed. Grimhelm's voice shifted, becoming hollow and ghostly.
I am thy father's spirit,
he declared, his posture growing taller, more imposing, as the words left his teeth.
doomed for a certain term to walk the night, and for the day confined to fasting fires, till the thorough crimes done in my days of nature are burnt and purged away.
A bolt of fear ran through everyone. Was this some bizarre glitch in Grimhelm's cybernetics? Nex slipped a worried glance towards Orin Starling, wondering if the captain had finally lost his mind. Starling stared at the captain, his pallor deathly white. Slime jumped forward. He thrust a small electrical device against Grimhelm's skull. Blue lights on every connected bone joint in his body jumped. Grimhelm shook his head. He looked around, seeing the bewildered and frightened faces of his crew. His eye sockets flared.
What are you all staring at? Get back to work. We've got a heist to pull off.
The crew scrambled to their stations, shaking off what just happened as best they could. A hand slapped Nex on the shoulder. He turned to find Rax Jarex, or rather Captain Oron Starling, standing above him.
A word.
Starling muttered, his voice low and urgent. He guided Nex to a quiet corner. Once they were alone, Starling straightened as he shed the role of Rax Jarex. His eyes switched around, and he leaned in close.
A most unfortunate complication has arisen. The Space Authority support fleet has been delayed.
Nex's heart sank.
Delayed? For how long?
Starling's lips thinned.
Long enough, I fear, to render them quite useless in the initial confrontation.
He paused, noting the fear in Nex's eyes.
However, we are not without some fortune. The convoy has been placed on high alert. They're expecting trouble.
Will it be enough?
Nex's voice faltered.
It will have to be.
Starling replied grimly. His eyes hardened.
Now, attend closely, Nex. When you set off from the Nighthawk in the shuttle, take your time.
How much time?
That I cannot say. Avoid arousing suspicion, but by no means make haste. Upon boarding the Aegis Transport, upload the security codes I entrusted to you. Should the need arise, I will create a diversion.
Nex nodded.
No, I have something for you.
Starling's tone shifted, becoming almost paternal. He handed Nex a bundle wrapped in plastic.
I commissioned Implore to modify some Rithgard body armor to your specifications. This armor has a phase disruption mesh that stops rifts from opening around it. I want you to wear it.
Nex's eyes widened.
Body armor? I don't know about that. I've never worn anything like that before. I'm not exactly graceful to begin with. Wouldn't it just slow me down?
Starling frowned.
This is not a request, Nex. You're about to enter a potentially volatile situation. The stakes are too high and the risks too great to ignore.
But isn't that stuff super heavy?
Nex asked, backing away.
I'm not exactly built like a space marine here.
You underestimate this armor.
Starling countered in frustration.
It will enhance your movements.
Nex shook his head.
Look, I appreciate the thought, really. But maybe we could find a compromise? Like, I don't know, a really thick jacket or something? Or maybe I could just try really hard not to get shot?
Confound it, Nex. This is no trivial matter. A single errant rift could spell disaster. Not merely for you, but for the entire operation. Everything for which we have labored hangs in the balance.
The intensity in Starling's eyes made Nex pause. He looked down at the armor. Its flat gray surface had a grid-like texture. After a long moment, Nex sighed.
All right. I'll wear it.
Relief flooded Starling's face. He handed Nex the armor and, stepping back, gave him a firm nod.
May fortune smile upon your Nex.
Nex retreated to his living quarters. The armor, despite Ironclaw's modifications, felt huge and clunky. He struggled to fit his arms through the sleeves. The material caught and bunched at his elbows. He tried to fasten the chest piece, but the connectors wouldn't line up right. When he finally managed to seal the suit, the armor pressed against his small chest and made it difficult to take a full breath. He tried to raise his arms above his head, but the shoulder joints restricted his movement, leaving him feeling stiff and uncoordinated. As he emerged from his compartment, the armor that was meant to protect him now felt like a cage. Grimhelm's voice boomed over the intercom.
All hands, prepare to exit hyperspace.
Nex took the turbo lift to the top deck.
Engage stealth mode. Exiting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Nebula Nighthawk shuddered as it tore back into normal space. Through the viewport, a cluster of ships materialized. In the distance, the powerful forms of the Space Authority escort vessels drifted silently.
Comms listings down across the convoy.
Slime reported, his bulbous eyes fixed on his console.
A little nanovirus, it's working perfectly.
He rubbed his hands together.
I wonder what they're thinking right now.
The Hell Runner, Captain Susek's dreadnought, decloaked. Its huge antimatter fusion arrays powered up, straining as they charged the Hell Runner's high-energy particle beam mounted along its spine. Susek's slip cannons fired. A series of cascading distortions rippled between it and the lead frigate. Its shields thickened like a bubble. For a second, they held, then collapsed as its emitters overloaded. The Hell Runner's particle beam fired, vaporizing hull plating and internal structures. Secondary explosions ripped through the frigate as its fuel pods ruptured in a brilliant flash that outshone the nearby stars. The cruiser and second frigate scrambled to respond. Their still partially operational weapon systems launched a volley of disruptor missiles that streaked toward the dreadnought. The Hell Runner's armor flexed on impact, redistributing the force. The Hell Runner slip cannons fired again, disintegrating their shields. Then it targeted their weapon bays with its particle beam and shredded through their defenses one by one. The Space Authority support corvettes surrounded the Aegis Transport in an uncoordinated zigzag. The Null Taurus's tractor beams clutched onto them, holding them in place. Captain Susek's amused voice crackled over the comm.
No quarter. Ensure there are no survivors.
The Hell Runner's main spinal cannon fired again, its beam so powerful it warped space-time around it. The shields of one of the corvettes buckled and the beam slashed it down the middle. The two halves drifted apart, explosive decompression spewing atmosphere and bodies into space. Escape pods shot out of its sides, but were quickly picked off by Susek's point defense lasers. His silky voice echoed over the comm.
Pathetic. Is this the full extent of the vaunted Space Authority's capabilities?
Nex watched in horror as the Aegis Transport attempted an emergency hyperjump. Its thrusters flared. The Null Taurus's gravity tractor beam latched on. The stress tore a colossal rift right up the center of the transport. Glittering clouds of frozen atmosphere and debris billowed out.
Those maniacs, they're going to decimate the transport.
Grimhelm growled, clutching the armrests of his chair.
We need that vessel in one piece, ye dribbling dullards.
He shouted at the viewport. The Nebula Nighthawk circled beneath the Aegis Transport. Above them, occasional flashes of defensive fire lit the hull as the transport's automated defenses put up a feeble resistance to the Hell Runner's onslaught. Grimhelm turned to Nex, his eye sockets glowing.
This is your moment. Don't disappoint me.
The captain's voice was cold. Nex swallowed hard. He managed a nod, forcing his legs to move. Slime followed as Nex made his way to the shuttle bay.
All those hours of practice. It all comes down to this moment, doesn't it?
Nex fitted an earpiece in his ear and climbed aboard the service shuttle, a compact vessel designed for maintenance and short-range transport. The control panel lit up as he settled into the snug pilot's seat. Rows of switches and displays came to life. Nex tapped the controls. Outside the viewports, the Aegis Transport rose before him. Its hull dwarfed the Nighthawk. The shuttle detached with a lurch. Nex guided it towards the Aegis Transport, trying not to think about those automated turrets that were blasting away at Captain Susek's warship. What if they decided to target him next? Nex's fingers slipped on the throttle, jamming it forward. The sudden thrust slammed him back into his seat as the shuttle leapt forward. A massive, jagged shard of hull plating spun by him through the viewport so close he could see the scorched paint and bent metal sliding past the side window. Smaller fragments peppered the shuttle. Each impact sent a jolt through the frame and the screeching of metal through the cabin. He approached the transport's docking bay and activated the shuttle's transponder, broadcasting a signal to Captain Grimhelm's agent on the inside. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with painful slowness, the bay doors retracted. Nex eased the shuttle inside. It bumped the sides of the door. The docking clamps engaged with a resounding thunk, securing the small vessel in place. Nex let out a breath and wiped the sweat from his face as the bay repressurized. With the immediate danger past, Nex's attention turned to the lumpy armor clinging to him. He didn't care what Starling said. There was no way he could work with that thing on. He tugged at the phase disruption mesh, grimacing as it stuck to his sweat-soaked skin. With a grunt, he yanked it off. It felt so good to be able to move properly again. Throwing the Rift Guard armor on the floor of the shuttle, Nex reached for a compact rebreather and fitted it over his nose and mouth. Nex glanced at DC. The little bot hovered by the shuttle's exit.
Ready or not, DC. Here we go.
Nex activated the shuttle's airlock. The hatch slid open with a soft hiss, revealing the large interior of the Aegis Transport's docking bay. Nex stepped out of the shuttle. The distant sounds of klaxon alarms and muffled explosions resonated through the ship. A figure with a pointed head and a sealed environment suit approached. Inside the reflective faceplate was a worried-looking old guy with a little white mustache. That had to be Kane, Grimhelm's inside man.
Well, I was wondering when you'd show up.
Kane's voice came through the suit's external speakers.
That paralytic gas did the job nicely. We've got roughly 18 minutes before it wears off.
He handed Nex a security badge.
Here, take this. Just put it on and it'll keep those security droids from getting too nosy.
Nex nodded. He clipped the badge onto his shirt.
Come on, let's get moving. I don't like all this noise.
Nex followed Kane through the corridors of the Aegis Transport. Flashing red lights lit the prone forms of security officers and technicians sprawled across the decks. A 3-meter-tall, shiny black Omega-class security droid strode past. It stopped for a second, its red optics narrowing to sweep Nex and Kane. The ship's interior was a mess of torn panels, sparking ends of superconducting wires, and occasional hull breaches bending out into open space, contained only by electromagnetic force fields. They reached the central security hub. This was nothing like the security hub on the SS Horizon. This hub was accessed through a reinforced alloy door with thick locks that could only be opened with a palm and retinal scanner. The door led into an elaborate series of walk-in cages protected with electromagnetic shielding. Inside, he could see banks of panels, buttons, and monitors. Kane gestured impatiently.
All right, do your thing, Speed. We haven't got all day, you know.
Nex pursed his lips.
Can you get me any closer than this?
Kane scowled.
Listen, kid, I'm not cleared for this sort of thing. They said you're the one with the skills, so let's see you work your magic.
Nex sighed.
DC, commence security systems override.
DC's sensors lit up. He began passive data collection on the biometric scanners, analyzing signals and extracting patterns in the encryption. After a minute, DC projected an artificial holographic image that mimicked the authorized personnel's hand vein structures and retinal scans along with a key code. The door lock sprang open. Nex stepped over and pulled open the cage. Kane started to step inside, but Nex pulled him back.
Stop.
DC's retractor door opened. The swarm of B drones drifted through the door, directing controlled electromagnetic pulses, disabling motion sensors and tamper-evident systems. DC followed them into the cage. Once inside, he plugged directly into the security system and accessed the system's core functions using Kane's identity passcode. The air boiled with tension as Nex and Kane waited.
Uploading security bypass now.
Under his breath, he added,
And a little something extra.
Seconds ticked by. The console beeped, confirming the upload. Then, one by one, the ship's defensive systems powered down. The patrolling security droids, visible on the monitors, stopped in place before slumping over. DC pulled his plug and exited the hub. The B drone swooped around and wafted back into his nesting bay.
That's it.
Nex sighed.
Defensive systems are down.
Kane closed his mouth.
By the galaxy's sagging gravity wells.
Thanks.
On the monitors, blast doors opened, clearing the way for the boarding parties.
Right then, let's get out of here.
In the distance, they could hear the sound of ships latching onto the hull. The invasion had begun. You've been listening to Darkcore Frontiers. If you enjoyed the story, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Wondrous Legends. And if you like this production, you can help us make Season 2 by supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/wondrouslegends. Thank you for listening.